Right. I wanted to do a little extra supplemental podcast video on AMPK versus mTOR as we talked to Dr. Kyle yesterday and looking at phytonutrients on how to stimulate AMPK pathway. But I don't promote taking supplements unless we test and not guess what you need. So we want to understand how to figure out, is this something you need based on your signs and symptoms now, functional lab testing, canoe metabolism test at rest and during exercise, and using a lumen breath device, seeing if you're struggling with fat metabolism, mitochondria health, and then also we want to look at your blood chemistry panel, specifically insulin and A1C and other signs that we might be struggling with metabolism, as well as looking at your full thyroid panel. What is your conversion of free T4 to free T3, the active form of thyroid? Do we have signs and symptoms of congested liver? Do we have gut dysbiosis, inflammation in your gut, leaky gut wall lining? Do we have high levels of endotoxins in your body and CRP? So there's a big process that I go through working with people before I say, here, take this supplement. We want to understand the why of a supplement and when do you need it. And we do, as an FDN practitioner and a nutritional therapy practitioner, really looking at you as a unique individual, running our foundational labs as we do as FDN, functional diagnostic nutrition practitioners is a mouthful, but FDN, we're more of a health investigator and really creating personalized programs. Now, I bought the equipment to do metabolism testing. So you have to come to, well, it's not have to, it's a benefit to come to Solana Beach to get testing with me to measure your RMR, your resting metabolic rate, and your AMR, your active metabolism rate. And as I said in the interview with Dr. Kyle, I don't want you to be intimidated to do an exercise test as advertised as a VO2 max test. I really want you to look at it as picture, a snapshot of where you are today and help us figure out what do we need to do, you do, to take care of the whole you from the inside out so you can be your best self in the future. So ideally, we're doing all this stuff before we have these huge red flags. And ideally, getting ahead of insulin resistance, type 2 diabetes, and all this chronic disease, it can be starting from managing our stress, prioritizing our sleep, getting the right type of food for your body. And that's what healthy means is going to be different for everybody. Some healthy foods can be causing part of the problem. So we need to really get a personalized program. So let me share my blog post. I put together some notes and check out the video with Dr. Kyle and all these other ones on AMPK versus mTOR. So just to review on the interview yesterday, AMPK activation, you have to listen to my interview. It was an interview I did with myself on AMPK versus mTOR. I've done a few different videos on that, sharing slides because I like visually learning, so you can check those out. Now, Dr. Kyle is in his space in nutritional therapy, metabolic health, mitochondria function, and really we're talking a lot today, or in this video, insulin sensitivity and strategic nutrition to optimize longevity and performance in life. And I really want to clarify longevity means not just living a long life, but a quality life. I am really focused on other shows talking about avoiding this cognitive decline, as my friend lost her mom to Alzheimer's. My husband lost his mother to Parkinson's. My mom just lost two friends of theirs. Men are all passed away before the women, by the way, and they both had Parkinson's. So Dr. Kyle and I talk about insulin resistance and a little bit of cognitive health. I'm going to have him come back on the show to talk about hormones, testosterone, as well as this cognitive decline. I really feel like we should put all this together. So I want you to be fit and healthy from the inside out. For 12 years, we've had this podcast really focusing on athletes, but I want to focus on not just the aging athlete, but anyone who's motivated to thrive as they age and do things differently, testing and not guessing and getting ahead of everything. So we are health optimizers. So AMPK is the body's metabolic master switch, influences energy production, fat oxidation, cellular repair. And we'll talk about the phytonutrients that you can take to activate this pathway. So if you are struggling getting the desired results with exercise, nutrition, you're trying everything and you're not getting anywhere, well, this is where I really find it's a good to invest a few $1,000s in your health to get a whole FDN type of approach of functional lab testing. So we're not just trying this, trying that, wasting so much money and years of struggling. And also, it's a lot of psychological issues we have too that we need to deal with our relationship with food or trauma or other issues that are not being dealt with to the why we can't lose weight. So if we can look at, as today, AMPK pathway, key fat metabolism, insulin sensitivity issues, stress, as I've said in many videos, as my own history, I was doing exercise and nutrition and being super low carb and doing the strength training and the cardio and, finding fun and laughter being outside, but I was doing too much. So it's that excessiveness of everything that can accumulate and be a chronic stress that can cause me insulin resistance, not from the food I ate, but because of cortisol. So something to think about and watch another video. So stress, diet, nutrition impact this AMPK. Now, again, talking about what nutrients you need to help activate AMPK, as Kyle and I talk about, I find when you look at how to stimulate AMPK pathways, if we identify you need more AMPK versus mTOR, or do you need more mTOR is my big question that we don't know unless we work together and test you. But AMPK, to stimulate it with fasting, so a connection between fasting, metabolic flexibility, looking at your exercise, sprint interval training is what you need to do, right? To hit it, if you've watched my other videos. How many people, I know I don't do sprint interval training more than once a week. And even if I get it in once a week, half the time, I need to get my heart rate up a certain level to do sprint interval training to get the benefits, stimulate this AMPK to deplete my body to get the benefits. So watch this video. I put the link in this blog page, but really working on improving your fat burning. Now, what is AMPK? We'll go back to what lumen is. I pulled that up. And when I do metabolism testing on people, this is an exercise test where this is actually mine. I was just doing it really slow, seeing the gold is your fat burning. And then carbohydrate comes up here. So you can see my metabolic crossover point kind of showing up here. But this red heart rate was really low for me, about 138. So you can say, okay, where does it really come up? Maybe it's 149 is where my fat drops off, carbs go up. And so I'm not burning as much fat. This is not max. I was just playing around this test, but just seeing how much fat I am burning at lower heart rates. This is metabolically healthy. We want to see lots of fat burning at rest or slow movement, zone 1. And then my zone 2, this is a very different test than I did 10 years ago. And then here's an example of someone else that they were burning some fat and their heart rate was just getting started. This was their warm up. And then we started the test. They went quickly to carbohydrate increased at their 125. So this is why it's so important to test. What is your fat burning efficiency? What is your ability to use fat at various intensity levels? And how early on do you have your metabolic crossover point where the carbohydrate usage comes up and the fat comes down? And then carbohydrates are your primary fuel. So we need to look at each person individually. Now we talk about lumen, and I've done some videos on that over the last few years. And lumen is a breath device that is similar to what I'm doing in a Pinoy test. You're measuring your oxygen in and carbon dioxide out at rest. This is an exercise test. But if we are doing the resting test, so say it would be just 10 to 15 minutes at rest, we're measuring your carbohydrate to carbon dioxide, what you're exhaling. The ratio of the two is a breath test that Lumen does and give you a score of 1 to 5. And it can tell you, are you burning fat at a level 1 or carbohydrates? So you get this personalization on here. So it'll give you some feedback on nutrition, on your exercise. So it looks like this little breath device. So let me know if you want a discount code. I put it in the links in the show notes. So that's how you can correlate that with, am I efficient at burning fat? So PNOE test, ideally first. Functional lab testing for sure, your blood chemistry, getting your insulin checked. Then day to day, you can use this Lumen device for a couple $100 and test in the morning, before and after meals. At least you do that for a few weeks until we figure it out. Maybe you do it once in a while. But it's a great way, fat burn 1, carb burn 2, or 3 is at 50-50. And then you can figure out how to add in carbohydrates to fuel your workouts that are going to be up at these higher intensity levels. So when we are doing sprint interval training, again, this is a bad example, but you're burning not fat, you're burning carbohydrates when you're working up at your max end of your zones. You're up at that bottom of zone 5. So say you're up here, you need to fuel for that rate, for that intensity. That's what Lumen can help you do to get you started and figure out what it is. So with this AMPK pathway, we want to talk about, do you have, I think it's more being AMPK imbalanced with your mTOR, and especially as we focus on how to be fit and healthy from the inside out at a cellular level, or mitochondria, as we age, looking at this master metabolic switch that regulates energy balance, fat oxidation, glucose metabolism at the cellular level in the mitochondria. So when AMPK is activated, it increases fat breakdown, which is called lipolysis. It shifts the body to burn stored fat for energy. It improves insulin sensitivity, so the opposite of insulin resistance or insulin insensitivity. And this allows your cells to absorb and use glucose, so getting glucose into the cell. And that's an important part of why we want to lift weights and get more muscle, lean body mass. So we have, remember the larger suitcase analogy of how you can fit more clothes into your suitcase, the larger it is. So think of your glucose are your clothes, shoving them into your suitcase is your cell and muscle cell. Now, mitochondrial function and increase your cellular energy production, which is ATP. And we'll talk to Dr. Patel. I'm so excited next week to talk about mitochondria and their ME scan to see how this can all relate with what our conversation is here. AMPK is essential for fat loss, metabolic health, and anti-aging benefits. So, as I said, stress impacts everything, and poor sleep has impact on everything. So you could be similar to myself. I was doing the nutrition exercise right. I was doing speed work. I was doing the low heart rate work. I was very fat adapted, metabolically efficient in my long distance training for Ironmans, marathons. I was very good at burning fat up to 160 something heart rate. Now, that's my point. It can be looking at your stress or looking at your sleep and the combination of the two. So several factors that influence AMPK pathway, stimulate or suppress this metabolic balance. So exercise, sprint interval training depletes ATP, triggering AMPK and restoring energy to burn fat. When AMPK is activated, it helps increase fat oxidation and improve insulin sensitivity. Adjusting your carbohydrate intake, especially if you're not exercising high intensity, you can go a little lower carbohydrate, and getting your carbohydrates from nature, not crap processed foods and packaged foods, is what we're really talking about. Eat nutrient dense whole foods from nature. Sorry, I'm very congested today from allergies. So we want to stimulate AMPK by going a little bit lower in the carbohydrate, lower blood sugar, and main thing there, I think, is related to insulin, right? Is my understanding. Now, how does cold plunge and heat stress impact our fat metabolism? Well, AMPK activation and metabolic flexibility can be improved, so we're more efficient in burning fat from the heat stress and the cold exposure. And we'll look at my sauna in another video, what I'm doing over there in my protocol for helping enhance that process. Now, excess calorie intake and high insulin levels suppress AMPK. So visualize that teeter-totter. AMPK down, mTOR is up. mTOR is down, AMPK is up. So we have that teeter-totter. So we want to remember that Chronic stress, overeating, chronic anything can be problematic. So we want to optimize our health, diet, lifestyle. But this is where it's personalized. What does that even mean? What does eat healthy even mean? That's my point. It's not the same for everybody. All right, the science being trim. So when I got into this and we did the metabolism testing, I'm not promoting it so much. I just want to understand it myself. So phytonutrients promote AMPK enzyme to help increase metabolism, burn fat. We need the botanical ingredients and nutrients to decrease acid that causes your body to burn fat, and then support fat and energy to burn it for fuel. So if we can't stimulate AMPK with our exercise alone, or if we're struggling with high insulin, we need to get the insulin down. But nutritional therapy wise, we can have these ingredients into a packet that I have here. This packet I just put into water each day and having it twice a day for a month or two until I can see my lumen is showing me I'm burning fat. So it'll be a 1 to 2 on there. Or if I go to carbohydrate burning before or after exercise, I'm coming back down to 1. So the lumen can help us figure out what fuel source are you burning with the breath test. Now, one breath isn't going to tell me a lot. I really rather you come and do a metabolism test with me every 2 to 3 months and have a little weekend trip in San Diego. Okay, so what are the ingredients in here? So berberine, there's lots of research on berberine, that it's a natural AMPK activator that mimics the effects of exercise and fasting on metabolism. So if you're not going to exercise, you're not doing your sprint interval training, this can be a natural way to activate and do what exercise and fasting is on our AMPK. Now, quercetin, did I say that right? I would say everything wrong. Mitochondrial biogenesis, and helps enhance insulin sensitivity. Resveratrol, yes, it's found in red wine and grapes, but I learned this years ago. You have to drink gallons of wine to get benefits. So don't think, oh, I get red wine, a glass of wine every night. It's not the same. You're not going to drink so much, because then you're probably going to be having alcoholism issues and lots of other problems and be totally intoxicated all the time. So taking resveratrol in a supplement is something I would suggest rather than expecting it from wine. And it's helping boost AMPK activation and promoting cellular longevity. All right, green tea, I always hear about benefits here. So how does that happen? Increases fat oxidation by stimulating AMPK pathways. So remember, green tea is caffeine, and the EGCG that's in the green tea, the extract, that's what's getting us the benefits for stimulating fat oxidation, but don't have it later in the day, right? So when you take the supplement in your water, make sure it's maybe morning and maybe early afternoon, especially if you're sensitive to caffeine. Now, curcumin, you've heard a lot about, and I have a whole podcast coming out soon on turmeric. But curcumin, the part of turmeric that's beneficial, helps reduce inflammation and support metabolic function, activating AMPK. So I want to understand always, how does things work? And so you can learn more on the website link I'll put in the notes, how each ingredient helps with our AMPK pathway. So if you're struggling to lose weight, again, we want to look at the whole picture. We're not treating lab results. We're looking at patterns and putting the missing pieces of a puzzle together. So we're looking at your insulin. I would look at your thyroid panel. I would ideally look at a gut test, a leaky gut test, your Dutch hormones. There's a lot to look at before we just take this supplement for that, because we want to understand, why is your fat metabolism struggling? What's missing for you? What's causing you to be holding on to that weight and not burning fat? So we look at how you're exercising, what your nutrition plan is now, what's your life stressors looking like, and identify hidden sources of internal stress with the lab testing. Now, green tea, L-theanine, helps activate brown adipose tissue. Again, if you look at cold therapy, that's what it does as well, activates brown adipose tissue. And then moringa leaf increases metabolism. So interesting, you can look at on the website all of the benefits here. All right, so how to activate AMPK pathway. We want to get rid of this stubborn weight. We also want to look at our hormones, cortisol, testosterone, estrogen levels, especially middle-aged females. Is our and genetics. Really look at your genetics. I like to look at as well. AMPK pathway, if it's underactive. So how to activate it, why we want to look at. So enhancing fat metabolism, telling the body to burn that stored fat for fuel. The signaling system might be broken. Insulin, you want to look at your insulin levels. Do we have glucose spikes? Is your blood sugar going up and then too low? How are your mitochondria working? We can test that in a Pinoe test. And I'm going to sneeze. Reduces inflammation, primary driver for metabolic dysfunction. So stimulating AMPK, remember, we have to still pay attention to mTOR and we'll get there. But mTOR is not bad. We need to stimulate both. But if you're struggling with weight loss resistance, not a slow metabolism, that's mTOR. But if you're not burning fat, as we identify in your test, as I look at the raw data, this person is burning fat, but some people are not burning fat at all. So these are not what I'm talking about, but good example of what we look at the raw data. So connecting this all together, what can you do to enhance metabolism, improve insulin function, boost your mitochondrial efficiency, reduce inflammation? By stimulating AMPK can break free from weight loss resistance and metabolic health. So intermittent fasting, a lot of us have done too much of. Some people need to do it more, depends on how active you are. But if you're not exercising, you're not active individual, fasting is a great place to start if your insulin levels are down. So listen to Dr. Kyle that fasting is going to backfire if you are burning carbohydrates because you're going to feel awful. So we want to use the Lumen device here and check how you are doing with your nutrition. Now, what can you do? Maybe start with a 12-hour fast, exercising 20-second sprints all out. You have to have that good sleep. You have to manage your stress. You have to have everything in order to hit those sprint interval trainings to get the benefit. Nutritionally, the fasting start with a 12-hour dinner to breakfast fast. So stop eating 3 hours before bed. So I go to bed at 8 o'clock usually. It's not eating after 5 p.m. if I'm at home. It's my regular schedule. Optimize your diet, whole foods, low glycemic foods, healthy fats and protein to keep insulin low and AMPK active. Getting the supplements in, you can take all these different supplements, but that's why I really like the ingredients here. That's just all in one in a package. So I'm all about stacking supplements together so we don't have to take 10 different bottles. So what can you do to get everything in balance? Well, we want to test and I guess, do you have high cortisol or low cortisol? Do you have high insulin? What else is going on? Chronic stress elevates cortisol, and look at what stress does. It can inhibit AMPK activation. This can lead to fat storage and slow metabolism, increase glucose, leading to higher blood sugar and insulin resistance, break down your muscle tissue, and so metabolism slows down. Poor muscle health, slow recovery. And so you're going to have this metabolic chaos we talk about. So fixing it depends on you. We don't just say everyone do this, but we know we all need to improve our sleep, optimize cortisol rhythm, and then looking at your workout program. Are you doing strength training correctly? Did you build up a foundation? How are you working on your form and alignment, and then go from there? And then if you have high insulin and you're not burning fat, as we identify on Pinoe test, or at least do a Lumen test, we want to look at what's best for you. Do you need to try this supplement to help stimulate AMPK? Are you not getting anywhere with what you're doing now? Then this might be appropriate for you. If you need a Lumen, use my code Coach Debbie Potts, support the show, and you get a discount. So this is where we'll talk a little more with Dr. Kyle about low testosterone, poor muscle health. So if you have low T, you might have problem muscle loss, slow recovery, more abdominal fat, low energy, low endurance. And we want to focus on the strength training and boosting testosterone naturally with nutritional therapy and working on testosterone production. Now, females, we might have lower estrogen. If you're middle-aged as myself, perimenopause starts 10 years before you start your menopause journey. And remember, someone called menopause, it's one day in time. It's officially you're in menopause for one day, and then you're in postmenopause. So it's 12 months without a cycle. And I'm not there. Estrogen declines with age. So I'm looking at getting my hormones tested actually tomorrow to see if my estrogen is high, because it was high and progesterone was low. So you want to make sure you don't have estrogen dominance before you start supplementing with estrogen. You have to keep everything in this metabolic harmony because our hormones are all connected. So make sure you test and not guess, because I thought my estrogen was really low, but actually I'm going to do a liver detox because I think I have congested liver. So my estrogen is slow clearance. And so it shows high, but it's not really high. But it's my own investigation on my health. So with lower estrogen, we have more fat storage because we have increased resistance of insulin, slower mitochondria function, less energy production, increased risk metabolic, and increased risk of sarcopenia. So how do you fix it? Strength training and sprint intervals. But I know most people that don't listen to this show, they probably aren't going to do it. They don't want to do sprint training. They don't want to lift heavy weights. So maybe they would do better taking a supplement as AMPK activators that are in the Trim supplement. And then estrogen metabolism, working on me, low estrogen, or do you have high? So bottom line, getting your blood chemistry tested, your hormones is a Dutch test, getting everything figured out first. So how do you know if you need AMPK stimulation or mTOR? Well, let's work on restoring your metabolism, getting protein with insulin, balancing foods, but getting leucine rich sources of protein, get the muscle protein synthesis activated. Strength training, getting benefits for AMPK and mTOR signaling, muscle building pathway, progressive overload, squats, deadlifts, push-ups. And I'm just going to go work out now and lift some weights for 30 minutes. So it doesn't have to take a lot of time. Prioritize metabolic flexibility, intermittent fasting. Again, you can use the Lumen code here is in the notes. Beam minerals, put my code in here. Remember, I do all this for free. So using my code, you get a discount and I get little money back. So it helps me pay for all these fees and time doing this. And sleep management, really important. So check all that out. Now, I did add in high cortisol, high insulin, low testosterone, low estrogen, and the bridge between the two, but taking home AMPK. But at the end, I was adding in the mTOR part. How do you know which one you need? So let's look at what you need. I just want to share that. And then I found this blog came today about being minerals and how the best minerals for brain function, longevity. And so again, you can use my code Coach Debbie Potts. I really think you should listen to that Beam Minerals. And I'll have Amber come back to do a follow-up on how Beam Minerals play with all of this as well. So mitochondria rich in minerals, when they are essential cofactors, mitochondria physiology, overall cellular health, nutritional recommendations adjusted to tune up metabolism. Well, so not just doing the trim and your exercise and nutrition, prioritizing protein, but just taking a shot of Beam minerals. I think is important to get these minerals that are important for skin, for aging, and for your cellular levels. So check out the 2-pack. It is $90, but I think you get a discount with my code, Coach Debbie Potts. But if you're working on improving how you age, check out this information. All right, I got to go lift my weights. I'm going to go do some legs, some deadlifts, and some planks. So talk to you later. Let me know your questions and your experiments and how I can help you live your best life in the future. See you soon.